Hello, welcome to Podfic Galore. I'm your horrible online reader, Goldscythe. I read out loud fanfictions for you busy bees, free of charge and no strings attached. Today I will continue reading the Silmarillion fic by Aeolian Sands called The Rescue Party, Chapter 23. I hope you can at least try to enjoy my voice, and I will try my best for you with the equipment available to me. On with the show. The Rescue Party, Chapter 23. Hugs all around! Fedot knew an opportunity when he saw one. Today was Captain Entrahill's turn to stand watch at the entrance to his hidden kingdom. While Tinwe, Finrod's advisor, had originally been a scribe from Miriel and then decided to spend a few centuries studying with Rumil, Entrahill had always served Finrod and his family. Moreover, Entrahill had once been close in friendship to Finarfin himself, acting as a second father to Finrod and his siblings. Finrod cherished his memories of listening to Entrahill read stories aloud to all four of them, and memories of him wrestling with them in the living room. It was an accepted fact that Entrahill's signature figure 4 leg lock was nigh unbreakable. Only Angrod had ever escaped, and that was partly because Agnod and his infamous pancake distraction. Finrod knew, though Entrahill had never once said a word about it, that the captain did not cross the ice for the thrill of discovery or to find new riches or any other grand motivation. Rather, he held an unspoken promise to watch over Finrod and his siblings, no matter the continent. His loyalty to the family ran deeper than any vow or spoken word. Thus, Finrod thought, looking behind him at his parents as they walked hand in hand, he would be quite pleased to see Atanemme. As they approached the cliffs of Nargothrond, he held his hands up and stopped the party near the Narok's banks. Anara looked around in confusion. Please, no more camping. The pace might be okay for Nola's elderly knees, but at this rate the world will end before we can challenge the enemy. My knees, beloved, are only about a month old. Look there! Nerdanel proclaimed before Anara could retort, pointing up at the cliff face. Finrod smiled. Trust Aunt Nerdanel to be the observant one, especially when it came to stone. The others looked in the same direction and gasped when they saw the great doors of Felakund carved high into the cliff face. "Dizzy the Narrows?" Kelkorm asked them, pointing to the narrow wooden stairs that ran up the cliff like a thread. "They're nearly invisible if you're not looking for them. They're the only way to reach the gates. Once you enter, there's a grand staircase leading to the floor of the mountain and to the grand foyer." "You really do live in a cave," nodded Finarfin with mild horror. "On the inside, it has a lot more open than it looks," Finrod replied. "The ceiling is sometimes so high above that it might as well be the sky. Great pillars and archways crisscross the interior space, and stairways are carved into the rock to reach the different levels. Nerdanel, you will love the stonework." "All this time, and I should have asked you to be my apprentice." Erwan was looking increasingly concerned. "Those narrows look rather precarious. Not to mention, we have to ford the river. Why don't you just build a bridge that crosses the river and goes up to the doors from here?" she asked. "Because that would be even more dangerous. It would draw attention to the realm, and also orcs could easily cross it. The narrows can be cut. They are wood stairs hung with rope. Orcs don't fly." "And neither do you." Finrod gave his mother a lopsided smile. "But I don't fall or lose my balance. Come on, I will show you all the entrance to the Narrows and also introduce you to an old friend." Edrahill, captain of the armies of Nargothrond, was a lean elf with dark brown hair and brown eyes. This morning he stood watch at the entrance to the Narrows, the only way to reach the doors of Felakund. He stood at the small guard post at the foot of the granite cliff, staring across the river to the forest beyond. There had been rustling in the trees that had piqued his interest. Perhaps it was some small animal or bird. However, Edrahill doubted it. Birds and rodents were much more subtle. "Come out, you lost orc slime. I've been itching to avenge those lost in the flames." Yet the smiling figure that emerged from the birch trees was no orc, warg, or dragon. No, this visitor was much worse. Dark creatures could be dealt with a spear to the stomach. However, this particular pain in the neck required different, less efficient methods, although it did have a weakness for things that glittered. "Greetings, loyal Edrahil," King Finrod called, looking entirely too happy and acting as if suddenly appearing out of the forest wasn't unusual in the slightest. Unfortunately, where Finrod was concerned, it wasn't unusual in the slightest. His king skipped across the stones in the river like an elfling. Where had he come from this time? "My lord Finrod, I wasn't even aware that you had left," Edrahil addressed him as he recovered from his shock. "I needed some space before Madras and Maklar arrived. You were always telling me that fresh air and sunlight are good for you." "Sure, that's the reason why." "Tell me what it is," he ordered. In court, his tone would have been far too bold, but there was no one else here, and he was low on patience today. "What is what? Don't play innocent with me. You are many things, but a liar is not one of them. You have found yet another ugly, unfortunate creature. What kind is it, and what odd name did it give you?" "Edrahil!" Finrod gasped in mock offense. "You know me too well." "But it is as you say." Edrahil tried to hide his sinking heart. For the second-born to Fëanorians and everything in between, Finrod made friends with anything and everything that breathed. He bet today's new companion was some sort of cave troll. There was more rustling in the forest, and then something else walked from the forest. Something with long, wavy blonde hair and intelligent blue eyes. Edrahil's mouth fell open as he watched Finarfin cross the river a lot more carefully than his son. "Captain, may I introduce you to Atta? He named me Findarato." Finrod replied in a voice so smug that the dragon Glaurung would have been hard-pressed to imitate it. "Ara?" Edrahil asked in disbelief. There was no way that Finarfin, the wisest of them all, had crossed the ocean to this cursed land. "Edrahil," Finarfin answered, and it was his beloved France's voice. Finarfin clasped Edrahil's arm in a warrior salute before pulling him into a hug. It took Edrahil a full moment to return it. He was so stunned. After a minute, Finarfin let go. Edrahil's former lord and greatest friend was dressed plainer than Edrahil remembered, but otherwise looked much the same as the day they parted. "My lord, Arafinwe, wherever did Findarato stumble across you in this well-forsaken land? What are you doing here?" "Well," Finarfin began, "I was having a relaxing walk on the beach when all of a sudden he showed up." Edrahil looked at Finrod confused as to what beach this was and how Finarfin came to be on it. When he realized that Finrod was not the he indicated, someone else was crossing the river. Someone who was supposed to be dead. "Golden grasshoppers! What is this?" he shouted as Fingolfin leaped over the last stone. "Edrahil, have you forgotten me so easily?" Fingolfin asked in despair. "No, never, but... Your Majesty, you ran off to face Moringatta." "I did. And he maybe sort of, Edrahil drew a hand across his throat. Technicalities, and not important ones. Today, I'm not even the guest of honor." "There's more?" Edrahil asked, backing up. "Finarfin and Fingolfin are both here." "That could only mean..." "It's us!" three ladies proclaimed happily. Edrahil released the breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. Sweet Arwen and her sisters by marriage were racing across the river, and before the elf of Nargothrond knew, he was in a group hug and near suffocating. "Wait, need to breathe," he gasped. They let him go, and he put his hands on his knees to make a show of recovering, his heart beating far too rapidly. "Arwen, Nerdanel, and Naire, it has been far too long. I can't believe you all crossed the sea. But Nerdanel, wise Nerdanel, I can't handle any more surprises. Please spare me." "Spared. The idiot got himself captured," she answered. Before Edrahil had time to fully digest that revelation, his thoughts were interrupted. "But don't forget about your guests!" Oh, no. That was Kelekorm, and he was running with not just one wolfhound at his side, but two. Actually... Adriel realized that the other creature was a true wolf. What the actual... No, no, no! Finrod! He shouted, swiping at his liege lord's head, for surely this insanity was all his fault. Mercy! Mercy! It wasn't me! It was my mom! My mom adopted the wolf pup, Finrod declared, dodging the blow. Onion is a good boy, Gelgrom offered. He's a wolf! Adriel explained in exasperation. And he's the least of the problem. What have you done? Bring Nels back from the dead! He's a good boy, repeated Erwin, and my law brothers escaped the halls on their own. Findarado, for once, had nothing to do with it. Adriel eyed Fingolfin, who muttered the word Feanor. The Noldo shook his head to clear the images of the halls in flames from his mind. Let me get this straight. You, your majesty, died. That was a low point, yes, Fingolfin answered. Feanor found you in the halls. Immediately. Then he burned down the halls and you helped him? Then the ladies here found out and they joined you in your merry campaign? I just don't believe it. And Otta, you too. I swore you used to be intelligent. And, worst of all, somehow Feanor got replaced by Wolf. Is Feanor the Wolf? We didn't burn the halls, Fingolfin replied indignantly. Winian is far too kind to be Naro. Nedanil told you he was captured. The lieutenant of Angamonda took him and left his wolf pup, Erwin declared. Would you invite him to the family? He has a good heart. There was a splashing sound. He looked up to see Garantir crossing the river and leading Finrod's horse. He did not look especially pleased to be there. Edgerhill half expected Manwë to appear out of the forest next. I'm the last one, Garantir explained as if knowing his fears. Is the back entrance still open? I'll take the horse there. I'm sure Findarado wants everyone to walk through the doors since it's their first time. I worked hard on those doors. Wait, you carved them yourself? Netanel asked. I did, Finrod proclaimed. Edgerhill rubbed his forehead. And you don't let anyone forget it, he said. Well, it's not my fault they became known as the Doors of Felagund. And Finrod stopped as if realizing something. Atar, Amile, I haven't told you the name the dwarves gave me. It's Felagundo, cinderized to Felagund. It is a rare honor to receive a name in the dwarven tongue of Kuzdul. What does it mean? Asked Erwin. Hero of Caves, Finrod replied proudly. Your son has become half-dwarven himself, Gilligan murmured. Nerdanel just winked at his blond nephew. I rather like it. It sounds like there are now 2 stoneworkers in this family. Just what we need, said Oneida. At least I won't be recruited for statue carving help any longer. Good riddance! I take it we have to go up these rickety old stairs? Did you build this too, nephew? Do I have reason to be concerned? None, replied Finrod. These are far more stable than they appear. Come, I can't wait to show you the city. He led the way, walking up the stairs that were, for the most part, suspended over the air and held by thick ropes. Winian whimpered and then attempted to jump onto Erwan's arms just as she was taking the first step. Come with me and Yavien, Garantir called to it. The pup obeyed, and even Juan left Gilligan's side for the safety of the ground and the back entrance. Edgerhill watched in silent amazement as 5 of the 6 Finwëns of his generation slowly ascended the Narrows. He thought he would never again see any of them in Beleriand, and here they had to go ambush him all at once. It was rude, but he found himself smiling. He had missed them after all. Aradel had been stunned to find herself re-embodied not in Gondolin, but in the middle of a grass sea. But at least Mondas was courteous. He had sent her a horse. This horse was elven, intelligent, and huge. It had, after some snorting and indecisiveness, gone to her side and led her mounted. She realized very quickly that the stirrups were not set up correctly for her height. She had gone to adjust the saddle only to see the Feanorian star carved into the leather. Maybe Mondas was not so courteous after all. Yet Arenhel was a risk-taker who was not about to walk. Besides, she missed her cousins no matter what Turgon said about them. She swung her leg over the horse, and even before she had found her seat, The destrier was charging across the plains. Aradel hung for dear life and wondered what cousin the stallion was flying to with such determination. All night they had galloped, and into the morning, flying ever westward, which was not the direction that Aradel had been counting on. High King Fingon of the Noldor in Beleriand looked over the battlements of Aethel Sirion. The clear spring sky and high noon sun brought hesitant warmth that began to melt the glistening snowdrifts. Its rays glistened on the golden ribbons braided into the High King's dark hair and reflected off his deep blue cloak. A horn from the corner tower pierced the mountain air. "A rider comes!" the guardsman called. Finnegan turned his gaze to the southeast. There, in the far distance, his elven eyes could just barely make out a horse. A black horse. Instantly, his heart leaped. Black horses were not uncommon, but they were loved by the enemy. Thus, there were few loyal to the free people of the East. Tarakas, he thought. Maedhros. Yet it seemed too much to hope for. Where was his escort? Surely Maedhros would not be so foolish as to attempt to cross the continent alone. He would at the very least have taken a small guard, but the black horse was without company. "It rides for us!" the same guardsman shouted. Archers on the battlements readied their bows, and Fingon turned, making for the stairway. When he got to the level ground, the man Galdor of Dorlomin was there, his dirty blonde hair wild about his face. Like Fingon, Galdor had lost his father in the flames and had been abruptly forced into leadership. "My friend," Galdor greeted. "Who comes?" "I do not know. Why don't we go see for ourselves?" "Nielan!" he called to a foot soldier near the gate. "Go to the stable master and fetch our horses!" "Right away, my king!" Galdor smiled as he watched the young elf race off. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" "If it were a Balrog or an army, then it would most certainly not be a good idea. However, we face a single rider. Besides, I recognize that horse." Galdor shook his head in amazement. "Elven vision continues to astonish me. What horse approaches?" "It is Tarakas, stallion of Himring. Maedhros's mount." "Maedhros?" Galdor repeated the name in near whisper. "I have yet to meet him. The common soldiers say that his fury is terrible to behold, that his hair is burning fire, and that his scars bleed molten gold when he fights." Fingon raised an eyebrow. "Molten gold?" "Aye, that is the legend of the elf lord of the East." The sound of hoofs echoing on cobblestone rang through the air. "My king! Lord Galdor!" It was stablemaster leading 2 stallions behind his own horse, one dappled grey and the other deep bay. While the bay's tack was in deep hues of hickory, the grey wore a bridle with embroidered silver and 3 blue sapphires on the brow band. "Thank you, Kalanka. Always you are so swift to get Lula ready," Fingon answered as he elegantly swung himself into the saddle, while Galdor leaped onto the bay. Together the Noldoran and the Lord of Dorlomion rode to the great gates of the fortress, which slowly opened before them. They urged their horses to walk through and wait on the stony plateau. As the mountain wind whipped his hair, Fingon's thoughts strayed to his cousin and friend. He knew that Maedhros would be planning to visit, but he honestly didn't know if he was ready to see him. "I'm High King now." It was a sentence he had been repeating over and over like a mantra in an attempt to make himself believe it. Yet his heart still rejected the notion, refusing to acknowledge its own destiny. The responsibility of leadership sat heavily enough on Fingon's shoulders when facing the court of Hithlum. However, at least within Hithlum, the people were still his people. He had been their prince for decades, and had long assisted his father in matters of state. It was natural for him to take on their crown. Yet he did not wear the crown of Hithlum alone. He had become High King of the Noldor. This meant that Maedhros would bow to him. Finrod would bow to him. And in his heart of hearts, Fingon did not feel worthy. Maedhros was his elder. Maedhros was his beloved cousin who taught him how to fight, and how to dance, and how to ride. It was Nelio, who excelled in diplomacy and knew how to inspire. Fingon's scars did not bleed golden. Orcs did not flee before his face, and the valiant did not flock to his walls. So by what right was this crown his? Because Madros had given it up in exchange for his life? No, because Madros had sworn his father's oath. One moment's mistake, that was all. The silver crown on Fingon's brow felt cold then, and he wished to throw it off, but he knew he could not. The cursed thing was all but brought to his skull. I see it, and it isn't Madros, Galdor spoke. Fingon was jolted from his thoughts. What? Ma would never let anyone else ride that horse. Tarakas would never let anyone else ride him. That stallion was as prideful as Fëanor himself. The king's heart rate sped up as he lifted his eyes and saw. No, that wasn't possible. Lord of Airs, Galdor whispered. It is a woman. And not just any woman. Irise! Fingon called, kicking Lule forward. Finna! The rider shouted, and there could be no doubt whose fair voice it was. The two horses snorted as they met, and Fingon stared across at his long-lost sister in bewilderment. Irise, it's been centuries, ever since you and Turo vanished. Then I got a letter, one of only two from our brother. The first said he was safe and not to look for him, and the second said that I had died. Fingon nodded in shock. Oh, but I did die, Finna. He leaned over the saddle to kiss his cheek. Murdered by my black-hearted husband. What? Fingon turned to look at Galdor. The man was just as bewildered. Sister, I didn't realize you hadn't wed. I did. Worst mistake of my life. I do not recommend it. Your husband killed you? Galdor asked, still visibly struggling to connect the dots. Unfortunately, yes. He threw a poisoned spear at me without warning. And now you have come for revenge? He asked. No, he's dead too. Turo executed him. What? Asked Fingon this time. Not that this unknown husband didn't deserve death, but Fingon was having a hard time picturing Turgon as the one to slay others of his own kind, own family even. Yes, Brother Turkana has ice in his veins now. Where is he? Fingon demanded, centuries of pent-up anger building in his spirit. That I swore not to say. Fingon turned in his saddle. So he really did leave me alone. He couldn't even protect you. Arenhild reached across and brushed his shoulder with her fingertips. I disobeyed him. My death is my own fault, and still, by the grace of Mandos, I have been permitted to return with the purpose of winning this war. We must not let these arguments rip the Noldor apart. You sound like Amille. Arenhild winked. Come now, High King Finna. She bowed from her seat. Let's go discuss how we shall finish what our Fey uncle started. Arenhild clicked her tongue, but Taraka snorted. Wait. Fingon held up his right hand. Sister, your horse. That is Taraka's. Where's Madros? The black stallion's ears peaked at that name. Arenhild's hand twisted in its mane. I don't know. I actually thought it would take me to him, but it did not. It brought me here instead. Galdor shifted. Fingon knew why. Arenhild was right. Tarakas would have taken her straight to his master had he been able to reach him. So, that fact that the warhorse did not, the fact that he went straight to Ered Vethring instead. Instantly, Fingon sat up straighter in the saddle. I need a messenger hawk, now, he proclaimed, and already he was turning Lule back towards the keep. Madros was in trouble. Nerdanel gazed at the intricate carvings of the doors of Felagund in awe. At its center, the likeness of Tyrion was depicted beneath gem-studded stars. The towers of the wide city raised to the sky, and the mountains loomed behind them. The detail was exquisite. From the cobblestones in the road to the trees of the Pelorris, not a line was left out. Nerdanel could even see her own studio window in the high tower of the palace. Finnarato, these are incredible! She reached for her nephew to give him a hug. You haven't seen anything yet. Almemar, he said, as if it were some kind of password. The carvings lit in golden light, the etchings in the stone dazzling in subtle brilliance. A groan was heard, and the stone doors heaved open. Nathaniel walked through with the rest of the family, and her mouth fell open. "Wow," whispered Anaira. "Wow, indeed." They stood on a platform that overlooked a great open cavern. Towering pillars that held arches of stone, veins of silver and gold streaking through them. The archways themselves depicted scenes of Cuivienen and the War of Powers etched in glimmering mithril. A great staircase descended to an open room below, its steps so wide across that 8 horses could climb them abreast. "We call this the Grand Foyer," Finrod said, "mostly because we couldn't think any other name for it." "It never ceases to amaze," Finkelfield complimented. Nathaniel believed that his words fell far short of describing the splendor before him. "Nephew, if this is how you all have been spending your time, why, I feel like I have wasted centuries," Nathaniel said as she slowly descended the staircase. Finrod shrugged. "I had immeasurable help from the dwarves, and most of the caverns were already formed. Yet that does not diminish the awe of this place. This is your great work." As Nathaniel neared the foyer floor, there was a shout from above. She looked up to see a small open stairway near the ceiling of the opposite side of the room. 3 blonde elves waved where they stood. Their raven-haired companion clutched the banister in a death grip. "Ata! Emme! Arato!" Finrod felt Tom stop. He looked across the way to see his 2 brothers. 2 brothers who had been so cruelly ripped from this life, standing and smiling from the walkway above him. "Boys!" Finarfin shouted, and then he was running down the staircase, Erva not far behind. "They told me you had died!" "Us? Never!" Angrod called. Angrod gave him an elbow to the stomach. "Ow!" "We did, Ata, but Mandas let us back!" Agnar shouted. "I found them, great Uncle Finrod!" Findulas added happily. "I had to save them from the advisor Tinue and his slippers." "Good work, Findulas!" "This is unbelievable. First Finkolfin and Fëanor, and now you 2! "Great Uncle?" Finarfin asked as he whirled on the foyer floor, looking for a way up to the walkway. "Yes, Ata! Meet my granddaughter!" Angrod yelled. "This is Orodreth's daughter, Finduilas. Her father is around here somewhere." "Eron is a great-grandmother?" Anara proclaimed in wonder. "You better take back all those old woman jokes, Mrs. Matriarch." Erwan was at a loss for words. Finarfin looked at the beautiful maiden with the golden hair that was apparently his son's daughter. He felt a sudden need to lie down. How? Fëanor and Finkolfin could feasibly be great-grandparents. They're ancient, squabbling old men anyway. But Orodreth? Little Orodreth? The elfling who loved the mountains and the rivers? Had a daughter? He turned to look at Anaire, who had walked down next to him. She looked a bit dazed. "Are there any other new additions?" his law sister asked. "No," Agnar answered. "Tuelko is a known flirt, but he enjoys it too much to have ever married." "Hey, at least I didn't love a mortal." Agnar went pale. Finarfin felt the air suddenly fill with tension. "A mortal?" Erwan asked quietly. "Yes," Agnar replied, looking down where his hands gripped the walkway banister. "I once loved a woman, but she's doomed to die." "You mean like you?" Fingolfin asked with gentleness. Agnar stumbled over his words. Findulas gave him a hug, and for a moment no one spoke. Then Finarfin's granddaughter broke the silence. "Life's not over yet. Not for either of you. It would appear as if death is not so permanent. Now, what are we doing up here? I feel like a character in a play shouting from the balcony. I need to give everyone a hug!" She reached for Agnar and Agnar's sleeves and began pulling them away. The raven-haired Noldo, who Finarfin realized was Tinwe, remained unmoving. Tinwe, have you turned to stone? Finrod called up. The elf in question shook his head violently as if trying to wake up. No, my lord. Just seeing a lot of ghosts. I'm coming. He turned and followed in the footsteps of the others. A door in the corner of the foyer swung open. Findula's was a whirl of gold as she ran. Finarfin felt the air leave his lungs as she barreled into him and gave him a crushing embrace. When they parted, Finarfin looked into the turquoise eyes and was surprised to see the likeness of his mother reflected there. You look like my mother, Lady Indis, he said. Findula giggled. I suppose I do. One day I want to meet her. And Lady Anaide? You're King Fingolfin's wife? For better or for worse, she shrugged. As Findulas ran around giving everyone hugs, Finarfin turned to see his sons approach. At once, his heart was filled with love for the two he had thought he had lost. A lopsided smirk appeared on Angrod's face. Don't you cry, old man, he said, pulling his father into yet another embrace. I'm not old. Finarfin huffed from beneath the group hug. Luckily, Fingolfin was too busy talking to Findulas to say any wisecracks. Family hug! Finrod shouted. He had grabbed Erwan's hand, and together the two raced to join the golden pile. Come on, Findy! Family hug! Nerdanel sat on the steps next to her son as they watched the Ara Finwayans reunion. That was cruel, what I said to your cousin. Sometimes we can't help who we love. The corners of Kelagorm's mouth twitched. I know, he said. Truth to be told, I get jealous sometimes. Look at them. He motioned to the giggling group of Ara Finwayans before them. That is a true family. For a long moment, the two of them sat in silence. We will never be that, Kelagorm continued. And not just because of the oath. There is too much damnable ambition in us. Maedhros is too busy trying to win a hopeless war. Korva has his smithing. I prefer solitude of the hunt. Mori was already emotionally distant even in Valinor. We would go to war for each other, sure, but we act more like a trade guild than family. Nerdanel looked thoughtfully at Fingolfin and Aira standing alone near a pillar. Something tells me that it isn't just us. This happens to the most families when time passes and distance separates. But know that I love you. I love you and your brothers, and yes, even your father, when he is himself. I love you too, Kelagorm said. And not just I, but your father and brothers love you. Deep down, I suppose they might. They do, Tueko. And one day we will be a family like that again. I promise you, one day we will have a group hug too. All of us. Together. That sounds nice, Amille. I do wish that you had the gift of foresight. End of chapter 23. Stay tuned.